Listen, Love, Connect is brought to you by Exceptional Heroes.
Hey everyone, welcome to Listen, Love, Connect. Today I have the honor of speaking with Kevin, and he's just going to tell us a little bit about himself. He is a fitness trainer with a limb difference, and he beats all odds.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm from New Jersey, as Savannah had mentioned. My name is Kevin. I've born and raised in New Jersey, and among a lot of things that I've done, fitness instructing has been one of the most rewarding, simply because it gets to help people become active again, especially if they acquire a limb difference. So yeah, there's Kevin Herbert pretty much in the simplest form there.
And how did you get into fitness training?
So I always kind of had to train with playing hockey, especially as I got into, the higher grade school and into high school. And then from there, it was just about conditioning. So it was a different type of fitness training, more so than like now I try to focus on preventative measures, or isolation, and maybe a little bit of corrective form. So it's a little different than that, because then, between, doing like endurance training, conditioning, a lot of just, compound movements, it's to help kind of train that, almost like sports physical therapy, but not quite to that level. That's kind of where I found myself. I had gained a bunch of weight in like 2 or 3 years. I went from like 160 to, almost collectively over, I guess, wow, probably 4 years. It was almost 100 pounds. That sounds more drastic. I went from like 160 to like 260, 265. A lot of that due to stress, some self-induced, some due to losing my mom. And so that kind of all compounded, and I just ate. I wanted comfort food. I wanted to feel good now. So I wanted that feel good food. And then eventually it just really started kind of wearing on my health, my mood. So it kind of diluted my decision making. It wasn't as sharp. So I was making wrong choices. So I really just wanted to say, hey, I got to start losing this, or like I'm struggling walking upstairs. So I just really started my journey. I was not connected into the limb difference community prior to that. And I just kind of started posting online, really, because it kind of made me feel good about seeing that, and then sharing it like, hey, I'm becoming proud of what I'm doing with my body and physically and everything like that, and just really striving for change. And along the way, you kind of learn how these platforms work. So you start adding like more specific type of hashtags and everything to get to a certain target. And I started meeting people online, and they're messaging from asking, hey, how did you set that up? Or how did you figure out how to use that strap? And, what's your like formula, and kind of talking to them about that, to, wow, you should really check out some of these other people. They're, whether it's their fitness journey or not, some were actresses and actors, musicians, authors, really just a wide spectrum of people. And so when I kind of start looking into these organizations, I'm like, I like that. Like, this is awesome. I could follow this. And that really just opened my eyes to, wow, there is a community of this out there. I just didn't know about it, and I don't know where it is around me. So that'll eventually come. And what I'm doing, which is bettering my body, led me to this, reward as well. So that really became, a piece of my heart there, because it was a milestone of going from kind of thinking like I'm kind of a rare situation to there's nobody that I've come across in 28 years that's like me. To recognizing this community. And why? Because I decided to take my health very seriously and start fitness training. So with that kind of gave me the idea, as I started going along, to say, hey, I have enough people reaching out, and I'm answering these questions, and in a simple form saying, hey, this is kind of how I do it, tailor it to yourself. and it has helped them. So that made me kind of go, well, can I take this to the next step and kind of, get certified in fitness training or personal training, and that'll kind of give me the proper background, I guess, to that, in addition to my experience with a limb difference.
That's amazing. And have you found any challenges with like going to the gym and like people looking at you, or just different things?
So many challenges because it's so different, which is, different is fine, and we understand that, but different also can bring a certain mindset. It's new, you're curious. Curiosity looks different really on everybody. It just really does look different. And so that brought it to, I'm trying to build my confidence with myself, and I need to be confident with myself. And if I'm working on that part now, but I'm not like fully there, then how can I be confident with other people kind of looking at me, whatever their thought is? They could be like, oh, this guy's doing it, I should be able to push harder, to what's that guy doing here? Whatever that thought was, like, I just didn't really want to face it then, because I was so focused on I need to be comfortable, not with my limb difference, but with what I'm doing here. So it went from that, and like headphones on, hat on, hoodie up, like nobody come up to me, like I probably seemed very unapproachable, which, thinking about it, could have gave the wrong message about people with limb differences. But that we're way past that. And once I start becoming more comfortable with not only just kind of knowing what I'm doing, like putting it into effect, and it's kind of working for me right now, but really seeing those effects and feeling those effects to be able to explain, like, hey, this is what I feel now, this is where I came from, these are the results I got from doing this. The proof is kind of more so in the pudding. So I just really was like standoffish, and I'd answer questions if somebody tapped me on the shoulder, kind of thing, but for the most part, very unapproachable. Tried going at times where like nobody was there, and to I didn't mind going during prime time and talking with people, and encouraging people, because I learned, after working in the fitness industry, kind of putting those two together, it helps people see, like, what's my excuse, whether it's visible or not. We are all going through something, for sure. It's just, in that particular setting, we're there to feel better and work on our physicality, our health. That goes along with heart health, our cardiovascular health, and physiology, and how we look. So that, oh, well, I noticed that two things: that this guy's kind of in shape and he's got one hand. So what's my excuse? And just really kind of using that play to say, hey, yeah, like, sure, it was kind of like a tactic, a strategy, but at the same time, it was to help kind of that person to encourage themselves to get to the next level, like really step up your fitness, or if you haven't started yet, if it can be kind of that barrier to break through and it sets you over and through that, then let it be. Like, use my limb difference for that, because it's encouraging you to become a better person. So, for yourself, for your community, for your family, thinking clearer, better quality of life, all of that. So that, in my mind, is a good way to use my limb difference, and by portraying that. So I really got to say a lot without having to say a lot.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where I'm like, oh, can you not bother me? I remember this one incident. This was probably it's the most standout incident, because it was the most I had said to it. I challenged it because I've been thinking it for a while. This was a couple of years ago, and somebody stopped what they were doing with their workout. There were a few machines over, and they came up to me. I have my headphones on. I'm in the middle of a set, so I'm in the middle of my movements, and they tap me on the shoulder to stop me, and to tell me, like, hey, I just want to let you know you're inspiring me so much, like, this is so wonderful, and I thought you should just know that, and it's, you're doing great. And like, in my head, I'm like, first I had to stop, like, this could be dangerous, because I got to turn my neck and whole waist differently. But I'm like, so I challenged it in the sense of, well, if I really inspire you, and it makes you want to do more, then I'm not doing right by you, because you should want to be pushing on an extra rep or doing an extra set versus stopping what you were doing to come over to tell me that, and then stopping me from my set. That's not really how inspiration truly should work. I understand the situation that's going on and how that could affect you in a positive way.
Yeah.
But by stopping to tell me that, that's not for me, that's for you. So I challenged that in a kind of a way that was, it comes off not standoffish, but it's also like, hey, let's think about that, really think about that word inspiration and motivation. And it did like that. He went over, he kind of didn't really have much to say. He didn't look offended, but he also didn't look happy or satisfied with what I had said. But he went and he was doing his thing. Like, he got right back to it, and he could have used that for, a little motivation. But really thinking about that, and that advice could really change how he talks to other people in the disabled community, or at a disadvantage physically or mentally. Hey, we don't know, but you know what? If I want to think they're inspiring, then with what I'm doing, I need to keep going versus stop doing what I'm doing to tell them so I feel better.
I think a lot of people, sorry, go ahead.
No. I pretty much wrapped that up.
I think a lot of people, like, they have good intentions, but they don't think it all the way through. Like, they don't think the other person's side.
Yeah, it's hard to see. I agree with you. That's a very good statement, because when there is no information out there and you're not seeing it and you're not hearing it and you're not reading it, you can't possibly really know how to approach that situation. You could have the best intentions in the world, but again, because there's some ignorance there, you chances are it's not going to, if you do approach it in a way that is how we want it to be, kind of streamlining that's luck, because it's not general knowledge. It's not something we learn in school. It's not something that you talk about at the dinner table unless you're living that situation. So I encourage people to ask questions and approach in a way that is, hey, I'm curious about your situation. I want to learn more so I know how to handle this. And this is, by seeing you do what you do, it has made me a better person in this way. It has opened my mind in this way. That to me is worth hearing, in this, like, hey, you feel as though you became a better person because you expanded your mind. You now know how to approach somebody in this situation. And that's awesome, and you're not assuming what happened to me. I think in that situation now, really thinking back to it too, there was a little piece in there of additional information where, because I was younger, my haircut at the time, it's winter now, so I grow it out a little bit, but I kind of shave the sides and have the hair up here, the beard, and in shave it, it was assumed that I was military, just flat out assumed. And it was, I just want to thank you for everything that you do, and what branch were you in? And so when we really get into that, it's kind of like, so now not only am I not inspiring you in the way that I want to, now I have to approach this assumption with, I have to be political about it. I have to be PC. I have to, really think about how I'm going to answer that, even if I feel frustrated about that assumption, because this is the impression that that person's going to have kind of forever, especially if it's their first limb difference person they meet. But it is just something that we need to kind of get rid of, certain stigmas around every type of, whether it's a life experience or physical disability or mental disability. And if we truly want to see it as just a whole populace, change and evolve, it's more about listening than talking.
And I totally agree with you, because having PTSD, a lot of people would assume that like I went to the military or something, and when I tell them no, they're like, then how do you have PTSD? I'm like, well, you can have PTSD from any traumatic event that happens in your life. Mine just happens to be sexual assault and not in the military. And
Yeah.
so educating people is such a big thing. And I think like with limb difference, PTSD, like you were saying, a lot of them are stigmatized towards military, which yes, they do have those things, but those things also happen because of the life.
Yeah, in fact, I'm gonna expand on that if that's okay, and there's enough
Yeah.
time. You know, that it seems as though there's almost like two really big stigmas when it comes to limb difference, which is either, hey, you must have been in the military, you look young, you know, you're young enough to make that assumption. That seems right? That's an educated guess. Or oh, poor you know, if you're a little bit older or a little bit overweight, or you're, you know, physicality is less than fit. Those are the two big ones. All poor you can't do much, you know, we're gonna, can I do that for you, because I'm assuming that you can't do it based on nothing, because, you know, I don't know, but it's
Yeah.
just it's what people say. And that's, you know, I like the humility that it brings, my limb difference, you know, to life, you know, for me, and patience and humbleness. But I also like being able to challenge people in other areas of the disabled community too, because where that could almost be warranted, like people may look for that because they're so exposed to it, and that's their normal, is, you know, some sort of empathy that is, in my mind, belittling, you know, oh, poor you can't do that. I'm going to assume that based on nothing. Where I'm more like, whatever it is in life, I'm just kind of like, yeah, we got to get over it. And it's not that that situation isn't important, or what that person is going through isn't important, or they're at different stages in their journey. It's that, you know, if we can have a mindset, we recognize and register everything, we consider everything, but with that, you have to be able to kind of pick your path of what you're going to do with the controlled and even uncontrollable. This happened, but as I see this now, I, even though I didn't have a choice with that, I have a choice right now. I have a choice on how I handle it and how I move forward. And that's like with fitness, you know, I failed time and time again trying to figure out the right way to keep balanced and work out right and keep my body kind of like as symmetrical as possible, you know, kind of finding my formula, in addition to trying to figure out what type of body style I have, what type of metabolism I have, and everything like that. I have to add in that big factor, because I could injure myself. I could injure my neck, my back, legs, hips, all that. I could really mess that up. And for a lot of years, it was trial. Like, all right, I'm going to do this and see where it takes me. And it failed. And I'm like, well, can't do that. But I notate that, and I write it and I think it, because I'm like, okay, well, now I know what not to do. You know, I can tailor some of these things, but I know that this definitely doesn't work, and you should definitely not do this if you're missing an arm. You know, and that really, when I first started with the like preventative type of fitness, even earlier, but not trying to be a fitness trainer at all, just kind of being in shape, like toward the end of high school hockey stuff. You know, I'd write down, I'm like, you know, in the back of my head, I'm like, I think if I ever do come across somebody with a limb difference, like I'd be able to help them. You know, that's what I want to be able to do. You know, I can't do it now, but I'm figuring this stuff out, and I'm going to write it down, because then I can document it, and then we can evolve it. And that was really the thought process that was like, hey, let's take something, really kind of latch to it, and apply limb difference to that, and let's roll with this. You know, because my mentality, I really like to like just hit it, and especially if I love doing it, you know, I don't look at it as a job or a chore. I go and go and go and go and go. And so that was something that really stuck with me. And people, tailor your workouts. What I do is not necessarily the best for you, but the one thing that will always work for everybody is just, having a tough mentality. It's easy to sometimes give in, and we have to give in sometimes because we need to reflect, we need to feel what's going on and recognize what's going on, register it. But it is what you choose to do with that can either set you off course from your life goals, which then that limb difference or whatever that situation, that's still winning. And if I have a choice between my disadvantage and stigma and people, belittling me and saying, oh, poor you can't do this, and assuming all of that, or me winning, I'm going to choose me winning. So what do I have to do and what can I do to keep that part going? So, people think that I kind of like try not to be negative or think about that stuff, but like I think about it. But again, it's what I do. A part of what we do is if I walk outside in my neighborhood, there's no other person with a limb difference. So even as people are, innocently walking by and seeing me and saying hello, if I reflect or if I give off, like I can't do much, I'm limited, I'm not social, that's kind of stick with that, it's going to build something in their minds. So a part of life, it seems like, for people who are trying to make the changes is like, you have to be playing chess with this, with, your social experiment. Essentially, it's, I have to be on almost at all times to really make that change. Be me, but not, and don't be fake, but understanding like, hey, if I can choose to have to not show this because I don't have to, or I can choose to show this, I'm going to make that choice. Sometimes you can't choose, and then you learn from that and you move forward anyway. But I'm going to make that choice. And I want to choose to show society that people with limb differences can work out, they can push lawnmowers, they can do household chores, they can pick up their kids and play with their kids, they can play sports, and they can play hockey and all this stuff. And it's great and wonderful because people who are reserved, and you never really thought it, but when they see me doing these things, they're so much more comfortable. They're like, oh, hey, you do this, oh, that's great. And it's like people don't know what to talk to you about because they don't want to offend you. They're like, do we talk football? Because you have one hand. I don't know if we should talk football or hockey because I don't know if you play or follow it, and I don't want to offend you. So that's really what I like to portray out in society is like, hey, this is my mission. We can be active. We can be encouraging. Life is hard. That's not to take away from that. It is very difficult. Like I have to put a lot of thought process into this. So it may take a couple extra steps to get there, but it's worth it. It's worth living life in a way that I get to kind of do what I want.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I feel like like you said, that you always have to be on because you could be someone's first limb difference that they're seeing. And you want to make sure that you give an impression that it's not sad.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And before we even continue, I want to give credit. I've always had that mentality, not it's so simplified. I would like to give credit to a good friend of mine who I actually also work with, who helped me get into like thrive in this career. James, he really put that simply. And when I'm like, that is just really a perfect way to say that. I saw that and I see that, but that is just a perfect way to say it is, you never know. You could be somebody's first, limb difference person, and they may never see an amputee after that, but that impression will stick with them. So what kind of impression do you want to leave on that? And, that really resonated with me. And I'm like, yeah, that's like mantra, for what I've been doing for the past 15 years, just not quite putting it into words like that. But you're right. I don't want it to pity anybody else because I don't know what they're going through. I don't want to be in something. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they can do this any other day, 364 days out of the year, but this one day they're just having a bad day. Something's going on. They're distracted. I'm there. So if it seems dangerous or it seems like they will harm themselves, I'm going to naturally want to step in. because I
Yeah.
like helping people become better. So, and stay safe. But otherwise, I'm like, we got to figure it out ourselves. Like, I will stay and observe because I'm also learning, you know, if I'm assuming, I'm thinking about what I want to think about, not what you're trying to portray or what I can learn from you. So I can learn your language, again, learn how you do things and get on your level, you know, put myself in your shoes for a little bit, so to speak. So that way, you know, I can be relatable. I can't be relatable if I'm not open to understanding you.
Yeah. So you said that in high school, when you were trying to figure things out, you wanted to help people, and what you are, you're an advocate. Can you tell us a little bit more of what you do in your advocacy and all that?
Yes, yes. And I will say this, high school was, I'll start from there and then really fast forward to what I do now. You know, high school was a time where I was really trying to find myself too. So like, yeah, I was advocating for limb difference, but I was also advocating for Kevin Herbert because I virtually had no idea where I fit in. I'm like, well, I don't know anybody else with a limb difference. I don't know a community out there. I'm going to a school where everybody has two hands. We don't learn about this in school. Like, I'm more focused on, like, I'll admit, you know, once I started thinking about life, when I hit that age of like wanting to think about life and kind of like being a little scared, being like, what can I do with one hand and be like successful? You know, I'm more focused on that life skills versus, you know, reading Macbeth, because I wasn't learning about that in school, and I knew absolutely no one with a limb difference. So that school was a very interesting time for me. Would I go back to it? No. Do I appreciate it? Yes, because I learned a lot. I wasn't bullied so much about it, but it was just very different. And, you know, kids are kids. And then, you know, when you get to teenage, you still kind of don't really know how to handle situations. And again, that assumptive, I'm not used to this, but I understand what I'm registering is you have one less hand than I do. So I automatically feel better about myself, but pity you.
Yeah.
And and that was felt, you know, I could certainly tell, like, it would only get so far with any kind of friendship or relationship for the most part. You know, I have my core group of friends that I still talk to from high school, but, you know, it was more so like, hey, we're approachable, you know, we're friendly, we're social, but like, that's really kind of it, because I don't understand you and you don't understand me. So with that, I was an advocate for limb difference because I wanted to show everybody else I can do as much, if not more, than people with two hands. So fast forward to now, kind of growing older and wiser and with more experience and depth. You know, there's a lot to go with the advocacy. You know, my job itself, my career is working with for a prosthetic company, and I do clinical liaison work. So that portion's, you know, business and development within the medical field, and building and bridging connections, but also peer visits with amputees or people who are going to get amputations or who have recently had amputations, and, you know, occasionally people who have had amputations for a few years and they never really had the opportunity to learn about it themselves. You know, so I really appreciate that part of it, because with the certification behind that, along with 33 years experience, along with, you know, trials and errors and adversities faced and feeling alone, and, you know, just really going through all those stages, and then being connected into the community for, you know, at this point, really connected into the community for about 5 years. Just kind of putting that all together and saying, hey, you know, I'm here for you. What do you want to get back to? What do you see as life? What were you like before? You know, is that something you want to go back toward, or do you now want to tailor a version of that, or do you want to try something completely different? Without these words, you know, we kind of get into that a little bit, very subtly, you know, but it kind of helps them start thinking about life outside that hospital bed. You know, it helps them kind of take control a little bit of a situation they didn't have control of. And when we can start talking about those things and talking with their families, A lot of times what happens is there's a wedge created with family and friends between the person who acquired an amputation and the family and friends, because there is a lot of conflicting information on the internet. No matter what you're doing, it's hard to know what's right and wrong to say, buzzwords, phrases. And so being able to talk with families really helps, bridge that gap, take that wedge out and say, this is kind of what they're going through, but this is kind of what they may be feeling. Maybe, because unless they tell me definitively, I'm not going to say it is and assume that, but this may be what they're going through. And the way you can find out is maybe ask these questions, because these ones typically are found not to be offensive, really to anybody. And you'll be able to get some information with that and kind of tailor to make your own. But also know that the pity factor, especially people who are going to be, wanting to be motivated to bounce back and get back to life as best as they can, they don't want to be pitied. They already went through such a big change in life themselves. Now everybody they know is treating them differently too. So that will naturally make them feel alone. So pity factor, no. And then telling people, hey, you know what? No, like, you don't be sad, don't be upset, don't be mad. You're gonna walk again, or you're gonna get through this, and that's fine. Like, there is a time and a place for that, and that's okay to use occasionally, for sure, because you're trying to encourage, and that is coming from a good spot. But if that's ultimately the only thing you rely on every time they're going through a grief process, that's often going to push people away, because you're ultimately telling them not to recognize their feeling, to address their feeling, to try to, face it versus run away from it. And most people are like, wow, I didn't realize it could be so deep with that. I just thought that, I was trying to encourage them, which you can be, but it could also be doing these things. Yeah. So education, a lot of literature. I participate in a lot of support groups. Community outreach is amazing. How we found each other, Savannah, Instagram, social media. I mean, it's free networking, it's free marketing, it's a free tool to be able to use how you see fit. And I choose to use it with how I kind of all got started with this, which is, making posts that are relevant to what I seek to do in this community, where I can't see them every day because they're far away. So I could use this platform to do so. And that's special too, because a lot of people have reached out from, off the internet or off Instagram and Facebook, asking about prosthetics, or asking, well, my friend went through this, and can you just talk to them? Like, they're in a really low spot. Or to somebody that was in my high school, I went to high school with and grade school with, haven't seen for 15 years, but ran into somebody, at a local mall, and was like, hey, you should go talk to this guy because he knows a lot of stuff about this and could potentially help you. Like, that now sits with people who I haven't seen in 15 years. That is very impressionable. And that's the type of impression I want to leave is, hey, I know somebody that can help you become, more involved with this, or maybe help you as a tool to get where you want to go, to make life a little bit easier. That's what I'm trying to accomplish here.
That's amazing. Before we wrap up, is there anything you wish or want to educate people on more and wish they knew, like when they meet someone?
Yeah. When people meet somebody with a limb loss or a limb difference and they don't have one, right? So right, okay, just so I knew what approach to take to that question, just be patient. That's a big one. Be curious. If you're curious enough to want to approach it in any kind of way, be curious in the right way, which is patient. Say hello, get to know them as you would any other person. If you're that curious to approach them, get to know that person for their personality. Don't make it so obvious that you want to just know about a limb difference because it's weird and you don't know it and you want to assume things. Get to know them, even if it's for 2 minutes. Hey, how are you? just want to ask you, I don't come across this often, but I would like to learn how this can happen. Can I ask you how this happened? And, most people at that point, that's a very good soft approach, but also very, it's very forward and progressive. So most people will say, sure, I've got a minute to tell you what happens. So that way and I leave a good impression with you. So be patient, be upfront, don't be assumptive. And again, remember, you really don't know what people can and cannot do. So immediately judging what they could or could not do, don't do that. And that just applies to life.
And do you have any last words before we end?
Resources, some resources, always look into what you have around you. Just Google it, get your starting point. It's about finding location and gathering information, but interview them. Do not just take somebody at their word. It is a craft, but it is a business too. When people are doing these things, whether it is prosthetics or wheelchairs, therapy, they need to make a living too, and they chose this field because they want to help people, but it is a business. So interview them. You don't belong to them. They virtually will be trying to earn your business. So make sure that they're right for you. And you can certainly reach out to me or you, Savannah, depending on what community you're a part of, reach out to that, and we can certainly give you some questions to ask, some websites or companies around you if you need those resources, and organizations. Look, these things aren't cheap. Therapy is not cheap. Prosthetics aren't cheap. And sometimes insurance doesn't cover it, or people don't have insurance. There are resources out there that will cover certain prosthetics that will be grants, and you don't have to pay it back. And I've got quite a few of those where we are able to work with people. Just in the past year and a half, two people very close to me had gotten something similar to myself, which is a hockey attachment or workout attachment. This organization was very kind in that sense. There's a ton out there, but it's hard to find them. So reach out to people who have the experience. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying somebody knows more than I do and I can learn. This has been a wonderful experience. Truly, I'm honored, Savannah, that you had reached out. This was a good opportunity. I always like doing community outreach in this sense because I get to talk to new people and meet new people that have parallel goals, and everybody has goals. Be connected, surround yourself with like-minded people, right? And you're able to then make a larger impact on that same change. And let's just keep doing it. This is amazing, and Savannah, I look forward to talking to you more, and we can do this down the road, and we could collaborate in other ways too, because I know you talk with a lot of different communities where this can apply, or some of it can apply, just like I can learn about the other communities too, which I'm excited about. So Savannah, thank you for bringing me into your world a little bit as we had talked, and I look forward to seeing what other people and how they handle their situations too.
Yeah, we definitely could collab again. This was so much fun. I learned a lot. And where can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my two biggest platforms are Instagram and Facebook, and my handle on Instagram is at Kevin_Herbert 0913, and Facebook Kevin A. Herbert. If multiple pop up, I'm the one from New Jersey, and with a limb difference. So and not too many of those with Kevin A. Herbert, but those are my two big ones.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you learned a lot. And always remember to listen, love, connect. Bye.
Oh, amazing. Bye.